Hi guys, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up, but I want to disclaim something because that's just what feels right to me. I know for a booktube video it would be very easy to just ignore what's happening in the world. A lot of people need escapist comfort, they need to have an outlet to escape to themselves, creators as well. What is happening in America right now is completely upsetting and horrifying, and I hate it so much with every fiber of my being. And I know what I'm feeling is only a fraction of what the Black community is feeling right now. I'm frustrated, I'm angry. I can't do a lot, but I'm doing as much as I can. And I just feel like it would be disingenuous to ignore it or just blip over it. So I want to be happy and peppy in my videos, but at the same time, I just can't in good conscience ignore what is going on in our society because it's not okay and it affects every part. This is a trying time, but I have a schedule, so I can't not make this video when I'm happier and when these things aren't going on, because they're going on every single day. Anyway, let's get into the books I read this month. The first book I read this month was Check Please Volume 2. I had to leave this book at my apartment and school. As you can see, different background. I loved it. I loved the first comic. I didn't follow the web series as it was coming out, but I did read it before I picked up the first volume. It's just one of those things that I love. If you don't know, Check Please follows this young college student named Biddy. He is joining his college's hockey team and playing hockey for the first time. He was before a ice dancer, I believe, and so it's kind of him and the team. Biddy has not come out to his family, friends, anybody really, and so it's him dealing with that as well, and then him falling in love. The second volume, the final volume, expands a little more out into the world, kind of the repercussions of having a public relationship, having a queer public relationship in the world of sports, especially when one is on a professional team. I love Check Please. It's just a specific niche genre I just really adore. Check Please is great. Definitely recommend. It was a 4 out of 5 star read for me. The next book I read after Check Please was Riesling by Kristen Kasher. This is a reread for me. I believe this is my third time reading this. I originally read this book when it came out, probably a year after it came out in 2008, and then I reread it again my first year of college. I don't know what it was, but I was just in a Riesling mood and I just wanted to read a good fantasy, and so I picked up this one because I know how much I love it. Riesling, it slaps. It still slaps. It's good. So if you don't know, Riesling by Kristen Kasher follows this world where some people have these magical abilities. So our main character girl has this skill where she's basically really great at fighting and killing, and her uncle is the king, and so she kind of is the king's bully, I guess. She goes around and bullies people for money and stuff like that, and kills people for him. This is my third time reading it, and what I think I love about this book is that it's so character driven and so internal. There's plot happening, there's stuff going on, but it's so much less about that. The plot is really all there to show this one woman growing into herself and understanding herself and what she wants and desires. I just think this book is ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and I really love it. This assassin trope has become so formulaic in a way. I love angry girl characters. I love girls that are capable and strong. Katsa doesn't fall into this mold. She doesn't feel tropey. She feels like a character with her own internal going-ons and stuff, and I think we have this hard-hearted woman assassin character in YA novels, and for me a lot of times they just don't work because they're just too brash, too overpowered, but when it's done well, it's done well, and this is a testament to that trope being done well. The next book I read was The Winner's Curse by Marie Rutowski. I've been wanting to read these books for a while. I have a lot of backlisted YA fantasy that I want to get to, and so this was available as an audiobook in my library, so I just picked it up because again I just wanted to continue the YA fantasy theme, and I really ended up enjoying this. I gave this a 3.75 stars. I will get into my feelings in a moment because as you will see I read the entire series. So basically the plot of this is that our main character Kestrel lives in an empire, basically what you would consider the Roman Empire or any of those kind of great empires that spread out and take over other countries. So she's basically in the role of an oppressor. She's grown up in a kingdom that's not her own with traditions and customs that are not her own, and the people that used to live there whose land it is are enslaved to her. And so basically the whole plot of this kind of jumps off when Kestrel makes a bad decision and she ends up purchasing a slave who is a young man. And the thing that really distinguishes this series is that Kestrel is not a good fighter, which is like a really highly prized skill in this society where it's so military. But Kestrel fights with her mind. She's all about strategizing. She's like a peak Slytherin character. And so it's really nice to see like a character that's like so ruthless in ways and a character that like makes decisions. I also read The Winner's Crime and then The Winner's Kiss. This one I gave 4 stars and this one is like a 4.25, 4.5 stars. So as you can see, for me, each book got better. Like Riesling, I think another reason why I loved this series is that it is very character driven, very character focused, very focused on our main character, Kestrel and Arin. Things happen in these books. A lot happens, but I think a lot of people would consider these books to be slower paced. But for me, that's what worked. Like, it was slow, it was methodical, we got so much internal dialogue and internal stuff going on in these characters' day-to-day thoughts, and that's what I really appreciated. So there is like plot and stuff going on, but a lot of it is like strategizing, gossiping, and court politics and stuff like that. These characters struggling to like come together and the angst and everything is like a really big thing about this series. So to have like the time and headspace to like really digest how these characters are like changing and growing together and falling in love with each other, I think it's a really strong move to have such a character-driven story and an internalized story. Once you start caring for Kestrel and Arin, then you start to care a lot more about the relationship, and it doesn't feel forced, and it like you want them to be together and you want the angst and everything, and it works really well. Like I mentioned, this series has slavery, Kestrel, the main character, in a position of oppression in like an imperial setting, and I don't think that bothered me because I think the author was aware of what she was doing. But I will say is that I do wish that there was more commentary on that. You know, Kestrel, obviously, and everybody around her is starting off with these feelings of prejudice towards the people that they've enslaved and oppressed. Obviously, that's how slavery and oppression works. Kestrel was a little bit quick to change her opinion, but also I just don't think we had enough time for her to digest and grow. Kestrel has to deconstruct her viewpoints. She has to start seeing these people as real people. And yes, like she has Arin and kind of already fell in love with him. Yes, she grew up being mothered by a nurse of this culture. In the final book, we finally got a little bit more commentary on that kind of struggle, but again, I do wish that there was more throughout continuously, that we could really see her changing her mindset, her own internalized prejudices, because I know they existed. I don't want to give it like an excuse, but like these books were written in like 2010. I think the final book came out in 2014. Like, it's not an excuse, but like I think if the series was written today, it would probably do a little bit of a better job with that. Like, I think people would expect there to be more of that commentary. But overall, I really love this series. I love the angst, I love the characters, and I'm really excited to pick up the new spin-off series. Next, I have a couple of manga. So this month I read Aoharu Ride Volume 10, and I read Yona Volume 23, as well as Full Metal Alchemist, the third bind-up for the 3-in-1s, which is Volume 7, 8, and 9. I talk about these pretty continuously on my channel, so I don't need to go too in-depth. This is an Asian fantasy following a young princess who has a coup happen in her castle. She has to escape with her bodyguard. She meets a bunch of friends along the way. She discovers a lot of things. It's a great series. Aoharu Ride is a high school romance. I would say like the big plotline is like grief and the death of a parent. I personally love shoujo that's like over the top, ridiculous, not real to life. I'm fine with it. But one of the things that makes Aoharu Ride so lovable is that the characters are morally gray, they're flawed, they feel like real teenagers doing dumb shit. They feel like really deep, fleshed out characters, whereas other characters are more surface level, or they're always either really, really good or really, really bad. And then Full Metal Alchemist is a much beloved shonen anime, shonen manga too. Basically, if you want to get into anime, most people recommend this, and I would recommend it too. It's a very, very great series, especially if you like things like Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is in a fantasy world where this thing called alchemy exists, and alchemy is the law of equivalent exchange. So basically, to be an alchemist, you have to give something in order to get something back. The idea of like nothing can come from nothing, so there's a lot of like chemistry, biology, a lot of science behind this magical system, and it's following these two young brothers who are trying to get their original bodies back, and the characters are lovable and fantastic. And then the final comic thing I read this month was Korra. I read Ruins of the Empire Part 3, which is the final installment in that. I really love the Korra comics. I think they're a great extension of the world. I love seeing Korra and all the characters, but I do really love the comics for both series, and I love reading them. The next book I read was The Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. This is the second installment in this series. I believe it's going to be a trilogy. This is set in a Nigerian-inspired fantasy world. There's a lot of elemental magic, but there's also like dream magic and death magic, and basically the big confrontation is between these two sides. There's like the royalty caste that doesn't really have magic, and then there is this people that live in this country that possess magic, and there is prejudice on both sides. There's violence on both sides, but basically the royalty caste kind of has been oppressing the magic caste, and because of this oppression they have somehow like stopped magic from being able to happen, so like nobody can use their magic. And so in the first book the whole plot revolves around bringing magic back, and this is done by our main character who is a magi, and then her and her brother come into contact with the prince and princess. So I felt very similarly to this book to how I felt about the first book in the series. It's not a good series, it's not a bad series, it's just kind of in the middle. I think the world is fantastic. I think the representation is spot on. I think we need more diverse fantasy, and I know this book means a lot to a lot of people. I personally, like, as a 14-year-old, when I was like still really into Avatar and watching Full Metal Alchemist for the first time, like this would have been my jam. It has like angry, strong, confident girls in leading roles, doing shit, being angry and fighting. It has more than one female character, like, thank God. And like I would have been all over this series. But I think when you start to scrutinize this series, it kind of falls apart. This is a very plot heavy story instead of character driven, so the characters don't always feel super fleshed out. I feel like they're kind of flip-flopping all over the place with their motives. The romances aren't just like not convincing to me and like a little forced, and the plot and the magic system is a little bit confusing and like not super well explained, and I'm not really sure like what the limitations are. Like I could not tell you how this magic system works, and I think that's kind of a big problem when the focus is so much on the magic system and the plot. Like if I can't tell you what's going on, then that's kind of a problem. I do really love Zelly's relationship with Amari. I think that their female friendship is so strong, and honestly like they have so much more chemistry. Again, this series has characters that are in the oppressor's role. I think this book series does a really good job of having other characters call those other people out, and I really appreciate that. But I wish there was a little bit more work, especially with Amari, with her overthrowing her prejudices, because like I think it would take a lot more work for her as a person to like really start to check herself. This series is fun. I think a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers would really love this series. This is like a pretty strong first series, and I think this writer is only going to get better as time goes on, so I can't wait to see what she writes after this series, because like I think it's just going to get better and better. And then the final book that I have on here is Solitaire by Alice Oseman. I am actually not quite finished with this one. The little blurb from the Times says this is the Catcher in the Rye for the digital age, and I think that is really spot on. So like if you don't like Catcher in the Rye, you're probably not going to like this book. And the reason why is that our main character is very like self-loathing, but she also is very hateful towards other people. She's like that really cynical personality, or she just like, you know, she judges everybody. There's a little bit of internalized misogyny in there. I think a little bit of internalized homophobia as well. This character technically hasn't come out as queer yet in the book so far. I don't know if she will. To me personally, especially with Alice Oseman's other work, she feels like a queer character, but like I can't say for sure yet. And like the major plot kind of thing that's happening is that there's this weird character called Solitaire who keeps like putting on pranks and doing things. I don't know who Solitaire is yet, and so I don't really know like the reasons why they're doing things, but it's much more about our main character and her, you know, just day-to-day life, dealing with her new friends that she's making. So to me, it's really obvious that this character is dealing with depression, anxiety, a lot of internal problems. I really hope that those those things get more addressed and that the character kind of like reaches a bottom before she like comes better and like realizes her mistakes. But I honestly, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I like Catcher in the Rye. I know a lot of people don't, but I like it. And not because like I agree with Holden, but because I see a lot of myself in him. I was very judgmental and hateful, but also just like had a lot of depression, anxiety, and I still do. And it's like seeing a character like that and just like being like knowing where that person is coming from, you know, not necessarily agreeing, but like I know how I felt back then. It's kind of funny because this book was published in 2014, which was the year I was a senior in high school, and I was definitely feeling a lot of those things and acting in a lot of those ways and just like not being in a great place, but also just like acting out and not being a good person. And it's just like, yeah, teenagers do that. They go through that. Is it excusable? No, but like, is it a part of life? Maybe, probably. I relate to this character a lot. I see where she's coming from. I hope she gets better. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this book coming out of it. It's this weird mix of like, I'm enjoying it and it's very readable, but also like feel really sad and just like, ugh, when I'm reading it. We will see. But so far, it's a very interesting book. But yeah, I hope everybody is staying safe in this time of quarantine. I hope everybody is doing the best that they can. And as far as what's happening in America with the violence towards protesters and our Black community, I hope that everybody is donating, participating, and especially listening to everybody around them. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later and happy reading.